When I inherited Grandpa's ranch, I discovered the neighboring HOA built 5 luxury homes on my land without permission. Then they had the nerve to demand $250,000 from me. Little did they know, I found their secret water well on my property. Time for sweet revenge. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. When my grandfather died last summer, I never expected to inherit his old ranch on the outskirts of Pinewood Valley. The property had been in our family for generations, but I hadn't visited since I was a kid. The will reading shocked everyone, especially my cousins who thought they'd get everything. The 200-acre ranch and all assets go to my grandson Daniel, the lawyer read from Grandpa's will. My cousins stormed out of the room, but I sat there stunned. I had no idea what to do with a ranch. I was a computer programmer living in a small apartment in the city, not a cowboy. 2 weeks later, I drove out to see what I'd inherited. The main house needed work, but the land was beautiful, rolling hills, a stream running through it, and tall oak trees that must have been hundreds of years old. As I was walking the property line at the southern edge, I noticed something strange. There was a row of fancy houses built right up against what should have been my fence line. I pulled out the property maps from my grandfather's files and checked again. According to the official county records, about an acre of my land had somehow become part of the Pine Lake Estates, a fancy gated community with an aggressive homeowners association. The next day, I went to the county records office and discovered that 10 years ago, the HOA had quietly moved their fence line onto my grandfather's property when he was already in his 80s and rarely visited the ranch. They had built 5 luxury homes partially on my land without permission. I scheduled a meeting with the HOA board the following week. "Mr. Wilson, what can we do for you?" asked Karen Palmer, the HOA president, smiling tightly as I entered the clubhouse conference room. 5 other board members sat around a polished table, all dressed like they were headed to a country club. "I'm the new owner of the Wilson Ranch," I explained. "And according to my survey and county records, you've built part of your community on my land." Karen's smile vanished. "That's impossible. Those property lines were established years ago." I laid out the maps and surveys. The official records show that approximately 1 acre of my property was incorporated into Pine Lake Estates without permission. 5 of your homes are partially built on my land. The room fell silent until Bob Matthews, a red-faced man in his 60s, spoke up. "Look, son, I don't know what you think you're doing, but Pine Lake Estates is a respectable community. We don't appreciate false accusations." I kept my cool. "This isn't an accusation. It's a fact. I'd like to discuss how we resolve this." "There's nothing to resolve," Karen snapped. "Those homeowners have deeds to their properties. Deeds to land that belonged to my grandfather and now belongs to me," I replied. Karen leaned forward. "Mr. Wilson, we can make this difficult for you. Our HOA has excellent lawyers. If you push this, we'll tie you up in court for years. Or," her voice softened, "we could offer you $25,000 to settle this quietly." I nearly laughed. "The land alone is worth 10 times that, not counting the illegal construction." "Take it or leave it," Karen said with a smirk. "A young man like you probably needs the cash." I stood up. "I'll be in touch." The next day, I received a certified letter from the HOA demanding $250,000 for unauthorized access to Pine Lake Estates and harassment of board members. It was ridiculous. They were building on my land and demanding money from me. I could have hired a lawyer, but I had a better idea. First, I researched. I discovered that Pine Lake Estate's water system relied on a well that was actually on my property. The HOA had been illegally pumping water from my land for years. Second, I found out that the only access road to the back 5 houses, the ones partially on my land, crossed through a corner of my property. My grandfather had verbally allowed it, but nothing was in writing. I hired surveyors to place new markers showing the correct property line. Then I built a fence exactly on that line, right through the backyards of those 5 houses. The fence cut off access to their pools, gardens, and in one case a garage. The homeowners went crazy. They couldn't believe someone would do this to their beautiful properties. The HOA called the police, but when the officers saw my surveys and county records, they said it was a civil matter. Karen showed up at my door the next day accompanied by 2 men in suits. "You need to take down that fence immediately," she demanded. "I'm simply securing my property line," I replied calmly. "We'll sue you for everything you have," threatened one of the lawyers. I smiled. "Before you do that, you should know I've filed papers with the County Water Authority about the illegal well you've been operating on my land. And tomorrow, I'm blocking the access road that crosses my property, which means those 5 houses won't have a way in or out," Karen's face went pale. You can't do that. I can and I will, unless we reach a fair agreement. 2 days later, I met with the full HOA board and the affected homeowners. This time their attitude was completely different. We reached an agreement. The HOA would pay me fair market value for the land they had built on, $500,000. They would also pay 10 years of back fees for the water usage, another $150,000. In exchange, I would grant them proper easements for the road and well, with reasonable annual fees. The best part? Karen Palmer was forced to resign from the HOA board after it came out that she had known about the property line issues for years but had concealed it from the homeowners. 1 month later, I received a check for $650,000. I used part of the money to renovate my grandfather's old ranch house, where I now live full-time. I gave up programming and started a small organic farm on the property. Sometimes I wave to my neighbors in Pine Lake Estates when I ride my horse along the property line. Most of them are actually nice people who were just led astray by a power-hungry HOA board. The new HOA president even invited me to their summer barbecue last weekend. I brought homemade apple pie from fruit grown on my land, my grandfather's recipe. As we ate together, I thought about how he would have handled this situation. I think he would have done exactly what I did, stand up for what's rightfully ours but be fair in the end. Justice doesn't always come from courts and lawyers. Sometimes it just takes someone willing to stand their ground, especially when that ground has been in your family for generations.